As you've started reading the materials on antitrust, you realize that the antitrust laws show a distaste for extreme concentrations of economic power. The antitrust laws don't necessarily make these extreme concentrations illegal. If I invent a product and make a fortune from it, or if, like Sam Walton, I pioneer a store that emerges as a world leader, it's okay. But the antitrust laws limit my ability to get to that position of controlling a large share of the market unfairly, or to abuse that position that I have once I get there. At their most basic level, the antitrust laws are there to encourage competition. Let's very briefly review what we've learned so far. Section 1 of the Sherman Antitrust Act prohibits agreements that unreasonably restrain trade. The purpose of this section is to prohibit people who should be competing with one another from instead conspiring with one another to drive up prices that affect consumers. Section 2 of the Sherman Act prohibits monopolization, which is the acquisition of a monopoly or of market power by inappropriate means. Again, the purpose of this is to encourage or to foster competition for the benefit of the ultimate consumer. And the Clayton Act prohibits mergers if they have an anti-competitive effect. As with the other statutes, the purpose of the Clayton Act is to encourage competition. It's kind of difficult to decide when something has an anti-competitive effect. We tend to use one set of words and replace it with another set of words. In antitrust law, we say that something has an anti-competitive effect if it gives a party unreasonable market power. But that, of course, begs the question, what is market power? And what is unreasonable market power? Market power is the ability of a business to profitably raise the market price of a good or service without losing market share. That's not a bad thing for businesses. Businesses want to be able to increase their prices so they can make more money. But it's a bad thing for consumers. If a business can raise its prices and I can't go anywhere else, it's likely because there's nowhere else to go. In a perfectly competitive market, market participants, people like Albertsons and Walmart, have no market power. That is, their customers can go somewhere else. A major goal of the antitrust laws, therefore, is to limit the opportunities to gain market power. In a monopoly, prices are high. If there are 2 stores that I can go to, the prices are going to get lower. If there's a handful of stores that I can go to, they're going to get lower still. And if there's lots of stores, the prices will be competitive or at the lowest point that natural market forces will allow. That means that in an antitrust case, one of the questions that is commonly asked is whether someone has or might acquire too much market power. And that means we need to answer yet another question. So we have a basic idea of what market power is, but there's an important and even more basic question that we first got to ask. What is the market? It seems like a simple question, but it turns out that it's kind of complicated. Market can mean at least 2 things. First, market can be a geographic market. Suppose that in the entire country there's only 2 sporting good chains, Joe's and David Bowen's, each with stores in cities across the country. Prices are, at least to some extent, kept in check because if Joe's sells Nike golf balls for $8 a sleeve and David Bowen sells a sleeve of Nike balls for $12, market forces will send us to Joe's when we want to buy Nike balls. But what happens if Joe's and David Bowen's were to merge into a single entity? The new store can raise prices because we don't have anywhere else we can go. Letting them merge would have a decidedly anti-competitive effect, as they might have the power to raise prices. But instead of saying that they're the only 2 chains in the country, what if they're the only 2 chains in New Mexico? Will there still be the same anti-competitive effect? maybe not here in Las Cruces. We can go to El Paso to buy golf balls. But what about our friends in Albuquerque? And what if Joe's and David Bowen's are the only two sporting goods stores in Las Cruces? Does that mean there's an anti-competitive effect? It's harder to make the argument because we can leave town and shop somewhere else. What if they're the only two stores on the east side of Las Cruces? Harder still because we can travel from the east side of Las Cruces to the west side. Deciding what is the relevant geographic market depends on the product, the price point, the nearest competition, and the ability to buy over the internet. There's no certain answer in any question or in any case as to what constitutes the relevant geographic market. Each case has to be decided on its own merits. Let's look at the idea of the geographical market in the context of a sports antitrust case. Meet Rhiannon Tanaka. A star high school player, Rhiannon was heavily recruited by a number of universities, including the University of Southern California, which belongs to the Pac-10 conference. Tanaka is later going to file a lawsuit in which she claims that when she was being hustled by USC, she specifically asked about whether there were any transfer restrictions, and she was told that there were none, provided only that she remained at USC for 1 year and met minimum academic requirements. After she was given this assurance, she signed a letter of intent with, and then later went to the University of Southern California. She very quickly became dissatisfied with the soccer program and the academic program. She publicly claimed that the university made arrangements for athletes to get credit for athletes for classes they didn't take. She began to communicate with other schools. Because she wanted to stay in Los Angeles, where her family was, and because the University of California's soccer program was nationally ranked, she transferred to UCLA, which is also in the Pac-10. After her transfer, USC petitioned the Pac-10 to keep Rhiannon from playing for UCLA, pointing out that there's a Pac-10 rule that provides that if a student transfers from one Pac-10 school to another, the student has to sit out for 2 years and is charged with 2 years of eligibility while they're sitting out. This rule had never, in the history of Pac-10, had never been relied upon before. But Pac-10 decided to play this card, and Rhiannon was prohibited from playing for UCLA. She sued, alleging a Sherman Act violation. The Pac-10 is much like the NCAA in some regards. It is supposed to be there to make sure that college sports are amateur sports. To the extent that its rules concern themselves with either academia or with student safety, courts agree that they are non-commercial rules and are therefore not subject to the antitrust laws. But if they're rules that involve sports as a business, then they are subject to the antitrust laws, and they're going to be governed not by the per se rule, but by the rule of reason. The trial court held that this rule was non-commercial and therefore wasn't subject to the antitrust laws. It went on to say that even if the rule was non-commercial, then it was reasonable under the rule of reason. So Rhiannon lost her case in the trial court. She appealed. Under Section 1 of the antitrust law, an agreement is illegal if it unreasonably restrains interstate commerce. Under the rule of reason, it unreasonably restrains trades if its anti-competitive effects outweigh its pro-competitive effects. To start the analysis, the plaintiff has to prove the restraint has significant anti-competitive effects within a relevant market. But what is the relevant market? The court said that the geographic market is the area of effective competition where buyers can turn for alternative sources of supply. Well, Rhiannon was buying an education. She had the burden of proving what the relevant market was and then proving that allegation to be true. She claimed that the relevant geographic market was Los Angeles. The court held that Rhiannon might want to stay in Los Angeles, but that she failed to prove that was her only realistic option. They pointed out that she had alleged that she was heavily recruited by colleges from across the country. The Pac-10 rule was an intra-conference rule and would not impact her ability to play outside of the Pac-10. So Rhiannon lost her appeal not because the rule was good, right, fair, or just, but because it didn't have an anti-competitive effect on the relevant market. The court's opinion provides a definition of the relevant market and notes that it's both a geographic market and a product market. The court's definition of relevant market closes with the phrase, "The product market includes the pool of goods and services that enjoy reasonable interchangeability of use and cross-elasticity of demand." What is reasonable interchangeability of use? What is cross-elasticity of demand? Neither of these are legal terms, but are instead terms in the field of economics. None of us are likely going to become experts in the field, but to understand some of the court's decisions, we certainly need to understand the concepts and to appreciate the jargon. Evian sells glass bottles of mineral water. I have no idea what its market share is, but let's pretend that it has 34% of the United States market for glass bottles of mineral water. Perrier also sells glass bottles of mineral water. I don't have a clue what market share it has, but let's pretend that it has 44% of the United States market for glass bottles of mineral water. If Evian and Perrier were to merge, would it have an anti-competitive effect on the market? Sure it will. It not only has a combined 78% of the market, it has loyal customers, it has shelf space, it has name recognition. Stores and customers will want both to continue, due in part to having very few recognized alternatives. If before the merger Evian raised its price, I could switch to Perrier. But if they merge and they raise the price for both, I'm going to have precious few options. Me and consumers like me, we're simply going to have to pay more. Or will we? If you drink Evian or Perrier and the market price went up 5%, what would you do? They have 78% of the market. They're going to have most of the shelf space in the big stores, and they're easy to find, and finding competitors' products may be difficult. You might find another brand of mineral water in glass bottles, or you might find a mineral water in a plastic bottle, or you might switch to spring water, or you might switch to Coke or to Gatorade. Whether the merger is anti-competitive, whether it has too much market power at the end of the merger, depends on the options that people have and will take. It depends on what they call in the trade the reasonable interchangeability of the product. Reasonable interchangeability involves having reasonable substitutes. If the price goes up and everyone buys the same product, they obviously don't have reasonable substitutes, and the courts will find there are no reasonably interchangeable products. But if a significant number of people change products when the price goes up 5%, then we know that there are substitute products, and the product market must include those which we can substitute. Stand by, because now we're going to get into even more jargon. SNP is a fancy acronym that simply means small but significant non-transitory increase in price. The phrase SNP refers to a test that's used by economists and by courts when they consider the effect of a price increase. The SNP test imagines that there is but a single business dealing in a claim to market. No one else does or will sell the same product. It assumes that the seller will want to increase its profits by maximizing the price and will therefore raise the price as much as it can. The SNP test seeks to see what happens as the price increases. In essence, it looks to see whether consumers think there are other products that are reasonably interchangeable. The application of the SNP test involves interviewing consumers regarding buying decisions and determining whether there is a hypothetical monopolist or cartel could profit from a price increase of 5% for a year, assuming that the terms of the sale of all other products are held constant. If a sufficient number of buyers are likely to switch to an alternative product and the lost sales would make such price increase unprofitable, then the hypothetical market should not be considered a relevant market for the basis of litigation or regulation. Therefore, another larger basket of products is proposed for hypothetical monopolists to control and the yes/SNP test is performed on the relevant market. Imagine that I have a market in toilet aquariums. If I raise the price 5%, will people keep buying it? I suspect that I may be the only person selling toilet aquariums. So if someone really wants one, or if somebody really needs one, they're going to have to pay the new price. But I actually suspect that toilet aquariums are not really needed by anyone and are wanted by few. Those few who might want them could lose interest if I raise the price and decide to find something new, like a microwave aquarium. The S/SNP test is often measured in terms of something called the price elasticity of demand. The price elasticity of demand is a measure used in economics to show the responsiveness or the elasticity of the quantity demanded of a good or service to a change in its price. Let's talk golf clubs for a minute. A company's profit is the product of selling lots of golf clubs at a high cost. But the simple fact of the matter is that the lower the price, the more it will sell, and of course the opposite is true. The higher the price, the fewer clubs it will sell. That means that if you raise the price, you'll decrease the number of clubs that you sell. But how do you quantify this? There's a very specific formula for the price elasticity of demand. You take the percentage change in demand, you divide it by the percentage change in price, and the answer is the price elasticity. The price elasticity is almost always going to be a negative number, except for something called Veblen goods or Giffer goods. Veblen and Giffer were economists who theorized that price doesn't matter to some people for at least some goods. If you can afford a Rolls-Royce and you want a Rolls-Royce, it probably doesn't matter if the price goes up. In fact, Veblen and Giffer went farther and theorized that for some stuff, the more it cost, the more likely it would be that someone would buy it since the price is a status symbol. But Veblen goods and Giffer goods are few and far between. In this class, we aren't going to work in Veblen or Giffer goods, but there may be an opportunity for extra credit at the end of the semester if you can tell me what Veblen goods and Giffer goods are later on. So we know that the number of golf clubs that a company is going to sell is somehow proportional to, or at least related to, the price of the clubs. The cheaper the clubs, the more that's going to get sold. Let's put a couple of different scenarios into this formula so we see how it works. So in one hypothetical, let's increase the price by 20%. We find that when we do that, the number of sets sold decreases by 20%. What's the price elasticity? So it's the change in demand, a decrease in 10% or negative 10, divided by the change in price, which is 20% or a positive 20, is going to equal a negative 0.5. Another example. If by increasing the price 10%, the number of sets sold decreases by 20%, what's the price elasticity? Here, the change in demand is a negative 20 divided by a positive 10, or a negative 2. Generally, the courts look at a price elasticity of negative 1 as a magic number. If the price elasticity is negative 1 or higher, and please remember we're dealing with negative numbers here, if the price elasticity is negative 1 or higher, then the seller has market power. If the price elasticity is lower than negative 1, then the seller does not have market power. I'm going to leave this on the screen for just a few more seconds. Maybe you should press pause when you get a chance. You should be able to determine the price elasticity for each of the ones that are on this list. If you have problems with doing any of them, then you should be able to come and see me. I put 4 small problems up on the screen here. I encourage you to hit pause and to solve these problems. I encourage you to determine the price elasticity for each of them. If you have problems with any of them, you need to come and see me because you will need to understand how to do this for the final exam. In the examples above, we were talking about the effect that the price of golf clubs would have on how many people buy golf clubs, or on the elasticity of the price on the product itself. But the price of golf clubs may affect other things. Can it, for example, affect the number of people it will pay to play golf? If the price of golf clubs goes up or down, will it have an effect on the number of people who are willing to pay green fees to play golf? Spend just a few seconds and anticipate the line that will show the effect. What do you expect to have happen here? Sure, it's going to go down. The more golf clubs cost, the fewer people will own them. The fewer people with golf clubs, the fewer people will pay to play golf. In economics, this is called the cross-price elasticity, or the cross-elasticity of demand, and it measures the responsiveness of the demand for a good to a change in the price of another good. A negative cross-elasticity denotes two products that are complements. Having golf clubs and paying to play golf complement one another. To measure the cross-price elasticity of demand, use the same formula as before. It's measured as the change of percentage in the demand for the first good that occurs in response to a percentage change in the price for the second good. If, for example, in response to a 10% increase in the price of golf clubs, the demand by golfers willing to pay green fees decreases by 20%, the cross-elasticity of demand will be negative 20, the change in demand, divided by a positive 10, the change in price, or a cross-price elasticity of a negative 2.0. A negative cross-elasticity denotes that the two products that are under consideration are complementary products. Let's look at the effect of the price of golf clubs on the sale of golf balls. If people aren't playing golf, then they're going to be buying fewer golf balls, though they may still buy some golf balls to play other games with. So we use the same formulas before. Let's imagine the price of clubs increases by 10% and the demand for golf balls decreases by 5%. What's the cross-price elasticity of the demand? Demand is down, or a negative 0.5, while the price is up 10, or a cross-price elasticity of negative 5. Again, the negative number is showing me that these products are complementary to one another. Would increasing the price of clubs affect the sale of golf hats? If not on the course, I won't be buying as many golf hats, but I may not buy golf hats to wear them to play golf, but simply as a matter of style. So there might be some relationship, but it's likely not to be as significant a relationship as with golf balls. If the price of clubs goes up 10% and the number of hats sold goes down by 2%, then the cross-price elasticity is the 2% that the price is going down divided by the 10%, that's the increase in price, or resulting in a negative 0.2 cross-price elasticity. Up to this point, we've been talking about a negative number for cross-price elasticity. A negative number, again, arises when the products are complementary. But if products are a substitute product, then the cross-price elasticity is going to be a positive number. If the price of clubs goes up and people stop buying them, those same people may want to play another sport, and so they may buy another product instead. Let's say that we want to look at the question of whether when people stop buying golf clubs, they start playing the game of croquet. If the price of clubs goes up 10% and the demand for croquet sets goes up 8%, what's the cross-price elasticity? Well, again, it's the increase in demand divided by the change in price And in this case, it's going to be a cross-price elasticity of 8, a positive number in this case. The positive number shows that these products are not complementary, but are competitive. I have an SUV. Whenever I go play golf, I throw my clubs in the back of my SUV. If the price of clubs went up so high that I couldn't afford to play golf anymore, I wouldn't have clubs to throw in the back of my SUV. Would I still buy an SUV? Well, we need to look at the question of whether there's a cross-price elasticity of demand between the price of golf clubs and the number of people who are buying SUVs. Fact of the matter is that while I use my SUV to haul around my golf clubs, it's not the reason I have my golf clubs. And if I stopped playing golf tomorrow, I still would buy an SUV next time out, and that's probably true for everyone else. That means there is no connection between the two. So if the price of clubs goes up 10% and the demand for SUVs remained the same, the cross-price elasticity of demand is, well, it's simple. It's the 0% change in the demand for the SUVs divided by 10, the change in price, equals exactly 0. If the price of regular roller skates goes up by 10% and the demand for inline skate goes up by 22%, we need to be able to determine the cross-price elasticity. We simply take the 22%, divide by 10, and we get a cross-price elasticity of positive 2.2. The positive number shows these products are competitive. It's not only a positive number, it's a fairly large positive number, which shows a high degree of substitutability. So let's very quickly summarize the points we've covered. First, the purpose of the antitrust laws is ultimately to discourage the extreme concentrations of economic power for the purpose of increasing competition. Second, in deciding whether the antitrust laws should be implicated, we really need to look at the market power that's vested with somebody as a result of any conduct. We look not only at the geographic market power, but the market power with regard to the product or service itself. We measure that market power by determining the price elasticity of demand or the effect on other products by determining the cross-price elasticity of demand. The formulas that are discussed above are in fact the same formulas that are used by both economists and by courts across the country. And while you don't need to memorize the formula, you certainly need to know how to apply it. Thank you and see you back in class.